To understand the sheer scale of the complete works of William Shakespeare, it helps to stop thinking of them as a collection of individual plays and start seeing them as a single, massive, interconnected map of human behavior. It is a map that covers everything from the bloody, muddy battlefields of the 100 Years' War to the surreal, moonlit forests of a dream. While we often categorize his work into histories, tragedies, and comedies, the reality is much more fluid. There is a constant, pulsing tension running through every single line, a struggle between the order we try to build with laws and crowns and the chaotic, often violent impulses of the human heart. The movement of this massive narrative often begins with the heavy political weight of history. Shakespeare's history plays trace a cycle of usurpation that feels less like a series of events and more like a recurring disease. It starts with the fall of the House of Lancaster. We see it in the desperate, honourable stands of men like Lord Talbot and his son John, who perish in France, leaving a vacuum of power. This political fracturing leads directly to the murder of King Henry V by his own brother, Richard, Duke of Gloucester. Richard is a man who views his own perceived physical deformity as a divine sign of his destiny to sow chaos. His rise to power is a masterclass in ruthless ambition, and it begins with the deposition of Richard O. The story of Richard A. is perhaps one of the most profound psychological studies in literature. He was a king who believed in the divine right of kings, the idea that his authority was a sacred, holy thing. When he is stripped of his crown by Bolingbroke, he doesn't just lose a political office, he loses his very identity. There is a haunting moment where he shatters a mirror, a symbolic breaking of the self that signals his descent. His exile to Pomfret Castle leaves him a shadow of a man, a precursor to the violence that follows. This cycle of seizing power by force sets a precedent for everything that comes after. It suggests that once the sacred order of the crown is broken, the blood will never stop flowing. We see this reach its most extreme, grotesque conclusion in Titus Andronicus, where the pursuit of revenge becomes so absolute that it turns to cannibalism, leaving a Roman Empire in ruins, waiting for a new emperor to pick up the pieces. While the kings are fighting over crowns, Shakespeare shifts the lens to the domestic tragedies that happen within the walls of palaces and the huts of commoners. If the histories are about the death of states, the great tragedies are about the death of the soul and the family. King Lear is the centerpiece of this breakdown. He is a man who mistakes flattery for love. In a moment of volatile pride, he decides to divide his kingdom based on how much his daughters can praise him. He banishes his only truthful daughter, Cordelia, because she refuses to participate in his hollow game of affection, choosing instead the sycophancy of her sisters, Goneril and Regan. This decision triggers a total collapse of the social and natural order. As Lear wanders out into a storm-tossed heath, his mind fractures alongside his kingdom. This chaos is mirrored in the subplot of the Earl of Gloucester. While Lear deals with the betrayal of his children, Gloucester is manipulated by his illegitimate son, Edmund. Edmund is a character who embodies the rejection of social custom. He views the laws of legitimacy and inheritance as mere plagues of custom that stand in the way of his own ambition. Through forgery and wit, he turns his father against his legitimate brother, Edgar, driving the family into the same madness and isolation that consumes Lear. By the end of these narratives, the tragedy is total. The innocent are lost, the guilty are destroyed, and the world is left to wonder if anything can ever truly be restored. Yet, Shakespeare does not leave us only with the darkness of blood and madness. He moves into the surreal and the romantic, exploring how humans use performance and disguise to navigate the chaos of existence. In A Midsummer Night's Dream, the tension of the political world is replaced by the dreamlike logic of an enchanted forest. Here, the Athenian lovers are caught in a web of fairy enchantment, where identity is fluid and emotions change as quickly as the moonlight. It is a world of confusion, but it is also a world of resolution. The chaos of the forest eventually gives way to the structured light of Theseus's court, suggesting that while human passion is wild, society has mechanisms to bring it back into alignment. This theme of performance is even more striking in the play, within A Play, Pyramus and This Bay. While the main characters are caught in high-stakes drama, these amateur actors provide a clumsy, comedic counterpoint. It's a moment of meta-theatre that asks us to consider the nature of reality itself, how much of our lives is merely a performance and how much is genuine. This sense of artifice and the struggle of identity runs through the entire collection. We see it in the romantic pursuits of Pericles, where a princess named Perdita is abandoned in a desolate wasteland due to a series of tragic accidents. Her journey from a discarded infant to a symbol of grace and hope takes 16 years, moving the story from a place of profound loss to a tentative, hard-won restoration of order. Even in the midst of war, as seen in Troilus and Cressida, the focus remains on the inconstancy of human passion. The Trojan War serves as a backdrop for a love that is tested and ultimately broken by the realities of betrayal and the shifting loyalties of men. When we look at the complete works as a whole, several major patterns emerge. The first is the cycle of usurpation. Shakespeare seems obsessed with the idea that power seized through violence is inherently unstable. When a king takes a throne by force, he doesn't just take a seat, he breaks the social contract, ensuring that the next generation will be even more violent in their attempt to reclaim it. This is why the histories often feel like a long, slow-motion train wreck. The second pattern is the tension between appearance and reality. Shakespeare constantly asks us to look beneath the surface. He pits outward flattery against inward truth, as seen in the contrast between the treacherous Goneril and the steadfast Cordelia. He uses masks, disguises, and even bad acting to show us that the world is rarely what it seems. We are constantly navigating a landscape where what a person says is often a mask for what they actually intend. Then there is the conflict between nature and custom. Characters like Edmund challenge the very foundations of society. They ask why a man should be punished for being born illegitimate, or why the laws of man should dictate the natural desires of the heart. This tension between the natural impulse of the individual and the customary laws of the state is what drives so much of the drama. It is the friction between what we want to do and what we are told we must do. Finally, there is the way Shakespeare uses comedy to highlight tragedy. He doesn't just use humor for the sake of a laugh, he uses it as a mirror. By placing a comedic subplot next to a devastating tragedy, he emphasizes the gravity of the main event. The absurdity of a clumsy play, within a play, makes the real deaths of kings and lovers feel even more profound. It reminds us that while the universe may seem ridiculous and chaotic, the human suffering within that chaos is deeply, painfully real. In the end, the complete works of Shakespeare don't offer easy answers. They don't promise that order will always be restored or that justice will always prevail. Instead, they offer a panoramic view of the human condition. They show us a world where the sacred and the profane, the divine and the animalistic, are constantly colliding. Whether it is a king losing his mind on a heath, a lover being betrayed in a war zone, or a group of youths wandering through a magical forest, the message remains the same. We are all caught in a struggle between the order we try to create and the chaotic, beautiful, and often terrifying impulses of our own hearts. It is a cycle of rise and fall, of mask and face, that continues to resonate because, despite all our modern progress, we are still navigating the same fundamental complexities of being human.